the implementation itself. So research is part of evidence building to inform policies. Then the number two, research will be able to, as you can see, research by nature is all about adding new knowledge to an existing stock of knowledge. So for you to be able to do that, you should be able to identify what exists and what doesn't exist. Then open up the research gap. So research will be able to identify problems and opportunities. In the first place, research can identify the problem of information, problem for understanding the concept of ZIM asset itself. It needs somebody to research on it. Because we are all just assuming that everybody understands what is ZIM asset. But if you pick one guy from this room and say, can you just briefly in 5 lines outline what ZIM asset is all about, I think we'll be surprised. Statistics, 90% don't understand. Only a few policymakers, maybe 1%, they are very much dedicated to it. Okay, then the other issue is research, because research produces or generates information. And it is all about information that will guide you to monitor, to put a gauge in terms of really finding out the direction, the performance of the policy itself. Then the other issue is documentation of best practice. As far as we are doing our ZIM asset, which is an economic blueprint, it is not the first economic policy if you look across the world. So in terms of practice, research will really inform us in terms of what are the best economic policy practice that we should adopt. Then I think you can see that it is through research that we can identify tensions between groups or between entities, between RC Research Council of Zimbabwe and the Biotechnology Authority of Zimbabwe. There could be some tensions. But if you do some research, you can identify that. So research can facilitate us to be able to find synergies, relationships, differences between clusters themselves in terms of ZIM asset. Then in terms of productivity and efficiency, it is research that can really, like myself, I did operations research, which is actually a degree much more focused on finding optimization models that can eliminate wastages, eliminate losses. And then the last one is identification of viable technologies. Is it biodiesel technology? Is it a viable one? Jatropha, is it a viable one? So it is through research that will bring out statistics, right? Then the other one is platform for innovativeness. This is the platform where Newton, for example, exercised, flexed his muscles in terms of his intellectual capacity. Then we want to find out how to ensure research addresses Zimbabwean challenges. Which challenges are we talking about? We can talk about why people have to go to South Africa to study there and not to study at the University of Zimbabwe, and not to study at NAST, for example. All those issues, all those challenges, for example, will come out through research. Research will bring results and objectives. In actual fact, how to ensure the research addresses Zimbabwean challenges. Number one, the objectives themselves and the results should be so clear, tangible, and more specific. I liked an engineer, I can't remember, from Zera. He said at Zera they are interested in evidence. Whenever there's no evidence, they approach that thing with precaution. So there's, there is also research should be aligned to national agendas and problems. In other words, let's not have that research that is at 180 degrees from what really the national policies are looking at. The national challenges need to be effectively communicated. I think most people understand that someone will just say, I've got problem, but they are not communicating effectively to the people who've got solutions. Less professors, less doctors, let's bring them forth and really give them assignments in terms of finding long-lasting solutions to our issues. I think I'll go just rush through. Then also the need of training implementers themselves. Who is implementing ZIMAS? They need to be trained in terms of how to transform that conceptual vision into action. Then also we are looking at government to set research targets. I think if you travel a journey without a real target, without a real destination, you end up wasting your muscles. So in other words, we need research targets, and we need to continuously review the ZIMAS itself. As far as we are now, we don't know whether we have performed well, or are we getting worse. We hear some other, from the media, they say things are getting worse. Others are saying, oh, can you see, industry is expanding. So which is which? We need research to find out that. Then in terms of recommendations, in terms of R&D, I think Research Council of Zimbabwe is so clear. If you can just take subscriptions from members, $5, $20, it depends with the level of membership. You find it, in terms of raising funding, it's easy. Not the way we are saying it's not easy. There's no funding from government. There's funding from people, not from government itself, but from people in terms of subscriptions. Then also there's issue of use of ICT. Mr. Bamba is interested in ICT. If you do e-marketing, for example, of all our research products, they will get to everybody. You find the preschool students, for example, they are using tablets, so you can reach them through e-marketing. Intellectual property protection, I'll leave that one to African University to elaborate on that one. Then rewarding of relevant researchers. Check out your rewards. Who are you rewarding? Is that type of researching adding value in terms of ZIMAS? Whoever got a reward, he should check himself and see whether his research was adding value in terms of practical articles that are really tangible in terms of ZIMAS. Then in terms of collaboration, I won't say much because of my time. I think it's finished. Okay. In other words, what we have said is, for those who are already published, maybe through our local journals or through what, I think the government or whoever get use of that. The researcher should be awarded in terms of realities. A good research should market itself. When it is a very effective research, let those researchers be awarded realities to that, which are long-term funding processes. Then we create RCZ magazine. I think those are additionals. Then also online linkages. All of us, we are busy in terms of workshops like this, but it would also be easier and interesting if we can create our own virtual group in terms of as a group of researchers, so that all institutions, NAST, University of Zimbabwe, RCZ, biological technology, etc., they should find themselves, they should find each other in terms of online facilities, in terms of their databases. There should be an exchange in terms of those databases. Then also conducive international collaborative policies. This we did it in terms of when we looked at polytechnics, for example. They cannot do direct linkages with other international organizations without government approval, maybe, for example. But there's more or less a barrier to that in terms of institutions like polytechnics. So if the government can open up on that, I think it can open up more room for more ideas. Then we should promote focused research. In other words, as we have been saying since morning, all our research should be aligned to the current national policy agendas. Then in terms of increasing marketing of research for, as I've said previously, I think I'm just repeating on that. Then in terms of membership, I think that's the end of it. I'm ending with a blank slide so that somebody will start from somewhere. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I need your permission to overrule myself. I had planned for 1 minute, but they say I must. Group 2, we're looking at how can research contribute towards the successful implementation of ZIMAS. Research should address national needs by creating technology that is production of things that are relevant to the nation. And Zim Asset is a blueprint. A blueprint is just a mold that you use, but you may apply different fabrics to build the same structure. It is the map. So the research must address our needs. It must avail the necessary knowledge or baseline information to be able to implement Zim Asset. When we say, for example, in the area of agriculture, to be a base, you don't just plant a seed without knowing what the characteristics are in the area. You have to study not only the geography, but even the social requirements of the people. It must be demand-driven. We mustn't produce for production's sake, including even trading. It must be relevant to addressing our needs. Because although our resources are limited, there is no limitation to how we apply them. The research should enhance employment creation. We know that the curriculum that we received as Africans was a curriculum that was geared for us to be supporters of the means of production for the colonizer. And as long as we continue producing people who can maintain things, those things we are trying to maintain are no longer relevant. So the curriculum must change. The attitude towards training must change. The demand should enhance employment creation. Yes, there are people who must have jobs, but there are others who must also have creation just of wealth. They like to develop things and they move on. Research should avail creation of wealth and be commercialized. We must be able to produce things that can be marketed, so that money that is in our pockets comes back to us and not going to the people who are producing from other areas. Zim Asset, as an example, it talks of new forms of energy: coal, bed, methane, biogas. But there is a need for us to come up with ways of how can this biogas be used? What are the sources? And how can we make sure that it is going to be environmentally friendly, so that you have got things that are multi-purpose and biodegradable? What is the means that is best for us to harvest it without harming our environment? The regulatory authority can actually assist by determining the type of research that can be conducted within the country. If we have people coming from outside, maybe they want to research on why pregnant women take a certain soil from a certain type of egg, so that they get to know that the nature that builds our bodies in there, they analyze it, they go and then they bring back synthetic things that have negative side. Our authorities must be able to say, no, you can't research in that area. How can you be able to, for example, to ride on a hyena at night and strike someone to ride? Those are the technologies we mustn't give away. They are state secrets. Getting priorities and challenges from affected people is very, very good. You must not only be able to prescribe a medication, the medication must be such that it can be accepted by the people. There is a researcher who came, for example, and they saw that people were moving 5 kilometers to go and fetch water. And they had the results. They said you must put tap water. They drilled boreholes, they put tap water. 3 years later, they come to do research. They found that the people were still going 5 kilometers to go to the well to fetch water, because the researcher did not understand the social side of it, that going out of your own village, moving across, networking with other people, exchanging information, socializing and building up, is not just about having a tap of water in your home. There are other dimensions to look at. You must create a platform for interacting among stakeholders, industry, researchers, regulators, and follow-up must be made continuously, because as the group one has said, the Zim Asset itself is subject to review. Although you can never change your scarf, but you can change your hairstyle to suit the occasion. A database on all research studies conducted and identified research areas to avoid duplication. We believe that as Group 2, this work has already begun. The organizers of this session we are having is already the seed of where we are going. Because we have come from different areas. The public sector, the private sector, all together, different institutions. That is a start. So the national research agenda must be there to avoid duplication. There is need to be aware of information dissemination that involves informal researchers. There are some people who are afraid of losing their intellectual properties. So there's an example of a farmer who has developed a way of curing tobacco out in the middle of nowhere. An excellent program that is going on, but not to everybody. And sometimes it's like a pregnancy. Before 3 months pregnancy, you have to hide it so that even if you miscarry, nobody knows. But at 7 months, you can have a premature baby that will live. So we must be careful as Zimbabweans of what information we give to people, what collaboration we make with people. The method things that we produce, some bigger consortiums may buy our ideas and give us jobs. We have had people who have come up with ideas and they are bought out of place. So there's need also to continuously produce PhD and master's graduates. We appreciate that you already have got foodies in this area. But as they get older and they become consultants, we need the younger ones. There is need for intellectual experts. There's need for academic experts, much as there's need for tech folk also. There must never be an end to learning. Yes, you can limit education to a syllabus, but learning must be continuous. There is need also to levy. How can we recommend the increase for R&D funding at least 1%? The bottom line is that 1% we are talking about is from government. Before we levy other people, we must make our government aware that the portion of the cake that must be shared towards research and not towards salaries and not towards the army and not towards the other systems, it must increase to 1% because currently it's 0.3 or something. But how can that happen? We need to let government aware and the nation aware that if people carry out research, they will come up with ideas that will bring more wealth and the taxpayers will increase and the donors will increase from within. The cake will be bigger. Although it may still be 1% of a big cake, it is much more than 20% of a shrinking cake. So research is key. We need to develop with incentives given also and tax rebates to people who are carrying out research. Revenue collection policies need to be reviewed. We need to find a way of stopping people from bearing money under their pillows. We need to stop people from selling things direct from the mine to the outsiders. We have to make the environment conducive to people being honest so that we don't kill our conscience by punishing those who are faithful and rewarding the crooks. We must improve also the system of revenue collection that I've said, government directives, fund collecting. What can be done to promote PPPs in research? Active collaboration via the participatory framework. May I know if there's anyone here who is from the private sector? Raise your hand if you are from the private sector. Anyone from the private sector? Okay, I see one hand. And when I see one hand, it means that hand can go and tell all the others that you don't get chewed up in the public sector. That means you've already opened that partnership. We need to collaborate. Even among institutions ourselves, we find that we don't know about each other. We are afraid of each other. We should complement each other, not complicate each other. Support, not suppress. Help, not hinder. We must not have professional jealousy. Somebody said at university there is no number one. You make it or you don't make it. So there are ways of promoting research collaboration. There is need for collaboration among academic institutions and not competition. I happen to be from Royal Polytechnic. How many people have seen an advert in the press, a call for papers for the second annual research conference by Royal Polytechnic? Quite a lot, yes. How many heard about the inaugural research conference by Royal Polytechnic that took place last year at Wange? How many people heard about the ZOO international research that took place I think last month? That's good. These things are happening, but we need to change where we look for information. We need to have networking as institutions. Use that last Harare, Mashwiko, Kwekwe. Let's network. But beyond the formal structure, let's network at the personal level. I was laughing when I said my number is 0772-227-141, but those who took it is genuine. And now I must go. 1 minute, that's 60 seconds, okay? There is need for informal sharing, collaboration, and conditioning of funding. What will I do without 1 minute, man? I hate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
May I also apologize that I have to catch a plane that leaves at 6. I must be taken away from here. Nothing personal, but everything is really personal. I love you all. I can't shake all your hands. I'll shake these two on behalf of you all.
I'm representing Group 3. Under question 1, which says, how can research contribute towards the successful implementation of ZIM asset? We looked at evidence-based research for policymakers, industry, and end users of research. And if you look at the ZIM asset document, there are some things that are long-term, short-term, and medium-term. So we should look at the low-hanging fruits, the research that will generate those fruits, so that we get quick wins, the short-term, and then the other long research that will be long-term. We need to fit into policy formulation. I know research, ZIM asset has already been formed, but it can be reviewed continuously, so we need to inform the policymakers on what we think is lacking or should be there. Our research should be ZIM asset centered according to the clusters as institutions. We should no longer do any type of research, but we should look at ZIM asset, those 4 clusters, and we align our research to them. Again, when we do research, we need to disseminate our findings to make sure that they become implemented. They should not remain locked in journals, in institutional, in thesis and the like, but we should disseminate. Question 2 was looking at what should be done to ensure that research conducted in Zimbabwean institutions addresses national challenges and interests. We need to outline the challenges that we face as a nation. We should go down to the grassroots levels and communicate with the people. As someone said, representing the agro industry, they're saying we should go to their field days and see what are the issues. That's what we need to do. Question 3 was, what are your recommendations on ways to increase R&D funding to at least 1% of GDP? And what can be done by RCZ to promote public-private partnerships in research? I think it should be mandatory for government to give us the 1%, because this is a national issue. For us to succeed, we should do like other nations that set aside funding. So government should sacrifice and provide the 1% GDP in order for ZIM asset to become a success. You also need the advocacy, talk about it, see if you can get the funding. Again, funders want a win-win situation. So it means we need to know the problems. Say if this industry is prepared to give the funding, they should benefit from the research that will be done by the competent researchers. And then the Research Council of Zimbabwe also needs to look for potential organizations which will benefit from the research. As RCZ, they can go head hunting for those organizations, find out their needs, and then they'll publicize those needs to the researchers. Then the researchers will carry out the research for those organizations. Pfizer, it should be Pfizer there. An example was given of Pfizer in the US. Is carrying out a research, unfortunately, I don't want to pick on women, erectile dysfunction, and they are selling Viagra. They are funding it a lot, and they are funding the research that is going on. They are getting money, so they are saying if we can get a partner like that, that will be benefiting from our research. And then question 4, what are your suggested ways of promoting research collaboration locally, regionally, and internationally? Researchers should be capacitated. Gone are the days where we are doing short research. We are now looking at best practices. We need to be trained. Training workshops are necessary. We also want to make our research visible to the outside world. I know we have the national database, we have institutional repositories, but I think it should be mandatory that we all submit our research to the database. As of now, submit if you want, but let's make it mandatory. This will make our research visible, and people will be wanting to collaborate with us because they've seen what we have done. We also need to stimulate exchange programs between institutions, locally, regionally, and nationally. And we also need to sign MOUs with other institutions. We should also be affiliated with different organizations. I'm sure for all disciplines, there are associations. We need to be affiliated. Then we'll become visible and we'll be able to have collaborations. Research should be funded, especially for PhD students. They are the ones that are generating original researches in the universities. So I think as a nation we need to fund research. It should be competitive, but I think it's a necessary thing to be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before, please. I'm concerned that we're all taking 10 minutes to do this presentation, so we won't be out of here by 5:30. If everyone takes 10 minutes, that's how far we'll go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think I will need all that time.
Thank you.
Group 4 talked about ZIMASET being a time-based program, meaning that it's less than 2 years left. So we need to be aggressive in information dissemination, including in local languages. We need to commercialize all research outputs, and it is the responsibility of the researcher to identify their ZIMASET cluster and promote relevant research output with clear IP protection and benefits. So we are saying to those researchers who are sitting on their research outputs, they must identify their cluster and approach RCZ and say, this is the research that I've done, and I want to promote my output so that they can be used. On question 2, we suggested that we should have an enabling policy, and that there must be coordination of researchers' output and users. The output should be connected to the users for adoption. So we are saying the industry or users should demand specific research areas. We are saying let's not have people just researching things that are useless to industry. Industry and the users should actually demand specific research. And then we said the market linkages for farmers for enhanced technology adoption. So we need to link the farmers to the researchers. On question 3, we talked about research scientists should be engaged within RCZ to develop proposals for funding. In other words, we are talking about think tanks. We are talking about professors sitting to write fundable research projects to attract funding from various sources. We also said the RCZ should work with institutions to raise funds, institutions including private sector. Then we talked about incentivizing the private sector, that is reducing taxes for those who fund any research projects. So not everybody, but only those who are actually remitting funds towards research. On question 4, we said locally we must call for collaborative research proposals. So when calls are made, we must ensure that institutions involved in research collaborate in the research so that it's integrated. Then we talked about the regional and international. We said we must identify common research interests within the regions and international, and then work with similar organizations or countries. Then we also emphasize that researchers must join their professional bodies. Like if you are an animal scientist, you must join a professional group which is involved in your specific discipline. And then we talked about reviving and supporting the centers of excellence, e.g. the Horticulture Research Institute. It used to be a center of excellence, but now it is deteriorated. And we are saying, let's revive such centers of excellence throughout the commodity groups. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
From question 1, where we were looking at how research can contribute towards ZIMASET implementation, like other groups have said, you find that we realize that ZIMASET as a policy is not well known. So we have the view that there's need to create awareness of the ZIMASET blueprint so that researchers can find it easy to collaborate or to add value to it. And also, we have found out that there's need for capacity building in research itself. Through curriculum review, we also say that there's need maybe for short courses on ZIMASET itself to conscientize students, to conscientize the student to understand what it is and what's required of it. And also on IP and grant writing is a way you will see where grant writing will come in handy on sourcing for funding, basically. And then we said that there's need for collaborative research, whereby we are saying from the identification of the researchable area, the problems that need to be solved, up to implementation of the recommendations. We are saying between government, the researchers, the industries, those who need the ideas, they need to collaborate so that they can be solutions to existing problems, not problems in the mind. We are saying that out of the Zim asset cluster, there's need for contextualization of national research. I understand there are 4 clusters, and that there's need for that to happen. And then there's need for business incubation, where we are saying that, like at Kenyatta University, there's need for universities to have offices that help researchers to commercialize their ideas. I think this will go a long way in coming up with new inventions and innovations. We also say that policy should be research-driven, where we are saying the government is resistant to GMO, but at the same time there's a problem of food security. So there's need to actually merge the two. To have research first, then we come up with policy. Then on question 2, we are saying there should be national priorities. And then on those national priorities, research should be based on that. I think that is very straightforward. And then, of course, government and business community should collaborate on those clear priorities. And then finally, we are saying government should be the clearinghouse for identifying possible funders of projects. If you have any questions, don't worry. My colleagues are here. You know, in our group, there were professors and doctors, so I think you get the best of responses from them. On question 3, we are saying that government and business communities need to partner for research, whereby we are saying industry brings its research requirements, and then they are directed to relevant institutions or departments. There was an example of at the University of Ohio in the US where it said that students came up or they created what we call the trash bin that are even currently used in the streets of that state. So I think it's something that we can call for. And then we are saying research supporting centers. I think this has been said before, where we are saying for those companies that fund research, somewhere, somehow, they should get some incentives from government to encourage more companies to get in. And also we are saying that there should be a research involving fund. I think this one is very interesting. Where we are saying this can be sustained. You know, revolving fund is something that you can get money from, then you return. But what we are saying in this instance is that we commercialize the research. Say that when we commercialize it, the payment for the commercialization and then return to the revolving fund, so that others can also take in it and do other researches. Then I think that was a mistake. It's supposed to be question 4 maybe. What we are saying there in promoting PP, we are saying that there is need for transparency, where if there are funds that are set aside to promote research, they should go direct to that. I don't know if you're getting what I'm saying. We are saying that suppose, for instance, there's an example there of the tobacco research funds that are channeled to government. We are saying that those funds, it should be made sure that they go to the, what is it, Kutaga Institute, I think something like that. Yeah, so that's what we are saying. Question 4, MOUs, I think they've been talked about. PPPs, they've been talked about. Accreditation with local, someone mentioned it. Then exposure to international experience through attending conferences and or established leagues. I think someone has also mentioned that. Then, finally, we are saying university programs should be pertinent to industry requirements. There's no next slide. Thank you very much.
How research can contribute towards the successful implementation of Zim asset. Most of the points have been highlighted and I'm not going to explain on those ones. Research can be used to identify economic drivers. This is for prioritization. We have identification of problems, possible solutions, and their implementation. We say documentation only is not enough. How then are we supposed to do it? We are supposed to identify the problems, sort out some possible solutions, then how we can implement these strategies. Then we also have identify ways of adding value to our resources. This one is clear. To identify and analyze value chains of every sector and ways of improvement. Development of high-yielding and drought-tolerant crop varieties and livestock breeds. Document climate change information and also disseminate the information. There's need to provide funding for commercialization of research. Like what I was saying, that we have a lot of research in our archives that was done, and how can we then benefit from the research that was done? There is need for us to be provided with funds for the commercialization process. We also have review of intellectual registration process. What is holding back researchers is the registration process of intellectual property rights. The fees are high, it takes time, so generally people are not going through the whole process. Then question 2 on what should be done to ensure that research conducted in Zimbabwe institutions address national challenges. People were talking about conducting need-based research, but you'll be surprised, some people don't even know the challenges that we have. So it is important that the challenges that the nation is facing are first identified, and these are disseminated to institutions that carry out research. Then we have funding institutions to carry out research towards the identified challenges. There is also need to create linkages between academia and industry, e.g. through joint workshops like we did, conferences with industry, academia, and private organization. Then researchers and private sector linkages are also important. There's also need for collaborative research amongst academia and industrialists. Question 3, what are your recommendations in ways of increased R&D funding to at least 1%? And what can be done by RCZ to promote public-private partnership in research? The fiscal should clarify on the budget allocation for research. Group 6 felt that there is need that the information is clearly spelled out. Then RCZ should be the custodian of research funds. There was a general consensus that most researches within the country are being funded through various channels, and recommendation 2 was given that RCZ becomes the sole custodian of the research fund of Zimbabwe. Then RCZ to embark on a vigorous awareness campaign. We felt that maybe some of the stakeholders benefiting from research, they do not even know or they do not appreciate the benefits of research. So RCZ was given a task whereby it's supposed to embark on a vigorous awareness campaign to let know to everyone the advantages of research so that they can support it fully. Then we have levy all companies towards R&D. This has been mentioned already. Incentivizing, it has been mentioned. Then question 4, what are your suggested ways of promoting research collaboration locally, regionally, and internationally? Conduct regional capacity building workshops. We create linkages between academia and industry. Then RCZ can also start a research mentorship program whereby those organizations that are already in the research business, they know how to access funds, they know who to forge links with. They can also help those organizations which are just getting into research. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm representing Group 7 on question 1. How can research contribute towards successful implementation of ZIMASET? We give an example that the ZIMASET is like to all of us, it should be like a syllabus. So it should be a guiding tool. So our research should be guided towards certain asset clusters. The examples given there is, for example, in institution of higher learning, it can be a requirement that whatever research proposal should be aligned in one way or the other to asset. Then the RCZ should coordinate research and promote only those the research that is related to asset. Then cross-cutting issues should be researched by all stakeholders and not be set aside for one party. Asset should be first understood. I think, like pointed out, that it should be like a syllabus. This syllabus should be well known. An example was given that government approached the Chinhoyi University of Technology before the implementation of asset, just to educate the lecturers there and the whole institution on asset. So such an approach should be adopted by government to sell asset, to explain asset, so that all people, researchers included, understand what it means. How can research contribute towards asset implementation? Research should be targeted at producing practical solutions. I think this point was well explained and articulated by previous presenters. But only to add on to say that research should address the needs of the people. Research should be viewed as a practical tool to provide solution rather than as a theoretical tool. It should be aligned to national policies. The other way that research could address or be forced to address national challenges is that from the saying that he who has the pie plays the tune. If funds are availed to RCZ, then RCZ can now support or give grants to those researches that to the research that is in line with the national priorities. So the other way is simply providing funding by government, and milestones are given so that those that research can be funded. Then towards 1% of GDP. These are the, so we're saying RCZ should be a professional body. And more to that, they can get subscriptions from researchers in Zimbabwe. That point was explained. Further to that point is that RCZ can actually become a professional publishing institution of research, so that it can attract the academia and also other people who want to use the research material. Then there is need for close collaboration with industry. This point was also explained together with that of the tax incentives or tax credit to companies that fund research. Then the promotion of PPPs. They should be, RCZ should be providing information to researchers in the public on opportunities that are there for collaboration, which means RCZ should have information on who is doing what, where, when, and how. So that if a person comes with a research proposal, there and there twin arrangements are made.
or are proposed. Then there is need, we have heard that there is a PPP framework for infrastructure development in institutions of higher learning. So there should be also a policy framework for PPPs in research. So that framework should be there, so that those who want to collaborate, they have somewhere to start from. Then there is need to disseminate information on research and popularize it. Then the last question, organizing international network conferencing. Sometime this year, I attended an international conference. It was research related. It was based on transport technologies for promoting pro-poor growth.